As I do so, I set eyes on strange niches on the walls of the valley ahead. Before I came to this area, my good friend Mohammad Kangani told me a few things about the Dayer Valley. One of those things was the niches in the walls of the valley. Mohammad Kangani is one of the avid researchers of Siraf. He has spent much of his life studying, researching, and introducing ancient Siraf to enthusiasts inside Iran and beyond. He has also set up a small museum in the city.
محمد تو به عنوان یک کسی که خیلی تلاش کردی تو این منطقه برای تاریخ و فرهنگ و محیط زیست منطقه سیراف چه توقعی از مردم و همینطور چه توقعی از مسئولین داری؟ خواسته کسانی مثل تو که خیلی بها میدن به تاریخ و فرهنگ و هنر و همینطور محیط زیست کشورمون چیه؟
یکی از موارد مهمی که ما میتونیم روش کار کنیم آموزش از درون مدارس ابتدایی راهنمایی، چه آموزش حفظ محیط زیست، حفظ آثار فرهنگی، توجه به آثار فرهنگی و میراث فرهنگی، اینا معرفی آثار به بچه‌ها که اینا خودشون میتونن یه سفیری باشن هرچی میرن.
یعنی خودشون رو صاحب این تاریخ و فرهنگ و اقلیم و طبیعت این کشور بدونن.
هر جا هم میرن نشون میدن که مثلا ما از نقطه اومدیم که اثبات حقانیت خلیج فارس سیرافه.
The remains of the city, including the bank and bazaar of ancient Siraf, as well as the wells, the cisterns, and the temple in the mountains, made everything clear for me. But the one place that people around the world all respect in the name of humanity is cemeteries. The only place left for me to see that was proof of life and economic prosperity in ancient Siraf was a very old cemetery. The Dayer Valley houses one of the cemeteries of Siraf. Contrary to ordinary cemeteries, the graves here aren't on the bottom of the valley. Before the introduction of Islam to Siraf, most of the inhabitants of this land were followers of the Zoroastrian faith. By religion, they wouldn't bury their dead. They call each of these niches in the walls of this valley Ostadan, or a place for storing bones. Back then, when they hadn't started burying their dead underground, they'd place the remains of their dead or even their bones here to decompose over the course of time.
داخل این استودان‌ها برای قرار دادن حتی 4 جسد تو بعضی از این استودان‌ها جا هست و جا
In some of these ostodans, there is enough room for placing up to 4 bodies. Others are very small. They can only accommodate the remains of a child, perhaps.
داخل کوه رو کندن. و این نشون دهنده اینه که
What they did was they looked for the right spots on the walls of the valley and dug horizontally as much as they could to make room for as many bodies as possible.
تا اونجایی که امکان داشت داخل اون حفره رو میکندن تا جسدهای بیشتری رو بتونن قرار بدن.
There is a theory that maintains these alcoves may have been where they put the elderly. They would put the elderly or terminal patients with enough sustenance and left them there to expire. But for someone who knows the Iranian temperament well, that notion is simply unthinkable. Historians speak of ancient Sirafis as people of wealth and of a rich culture and civilization. Therefore, ancient Sirafis would no doubt pay great homage to the elderly, who were most probably senior members of their own families. So there wouldn't have been a reason for them to banish their elders to live in such tough conditions in mountainside alcoves. Without a doubt, something like that would have been considered a form of torture or even murder. The big houses and the culture and wealth of the people of Siraf could not possibly have allowed something like that. Most researchers believe these niches in the walls of the valley are nothing but graves that ancient Sirafis used to place the remains of their dead in. Graves dug into the walls of the valley to protect the remains against wild animals and floods. These graves were called Gur-dakhmez, or Towers of Silence.
اینجا اعماق دره لیره. دره‌ای که تقریبا میشه گفت گورستان باستانی منطقه سیراف در اینجا قرار داره. تو دیوارهای این دره
This is the bottom of the Leer Valley. You could say it houses Siraf's ancient cemetery. The walls of this valley are riddled with graves that go back 1,500 to 2,000 or even 3,000 years ago. They're full of the bones of those who inhabited this area thousands of years ago. This Ostudan, for example, is full of those bones. I don't know when exactly they lived in this area or how much of life in Siraf they experienced.
چه فصلی از این منطقه رو از تاریخ این منطقه رو به چشم خودشون دیدن. این سنگ‌هایی که اینجا ریخته شده، سنگ‌های خیلی بزرگی که اینجا ریخته شده، قسمتی از دیوارهای این دره است.
The rocks you see here, these boulders stacked up over here, used to form part of this massive wall behind me. In these rocks, I can see the cave-like formations that used to be cisterns on top of the Siraf mountain. Unfortunately, this region's climate is really causing the traditional reservoirs here, these man-made constructions that are centuries old, to be eroded away much faster than those in other areas with less extreme climatic conditions. Many of the holes, catacombs, and ostudans have all been destroyed by landslides, torrential rains, and flooding in the area over the years. Nonetheless, many catacombs, wells, and cisterns have survived to this day, which can be preserved and introduced to others so they can learn about the architecture, the culture, and history of our ancestors.
از اونها حفاظت کرد و اونها رو به دیگران معرفی کرد تا بتونن از معماری و تاریخ و فرهنگ گذشتگان خودشون اطلاعاتی کسب بکنن. خیلی از این گوردخمه‌ها رو وقتی که اجساد رو داخلشون می‌ذاشتن و پر می‌شد.
With many of these catacombs, what they did was they would wall off their entrances after putting the remains of the dead in them. Look, you can still see the frame at the mouth of this one here. They used stones and saruj to block off the entrance to this grave to prevent anyone from trying to touch them or to prevent wild animals from accessing the bodies inside and harming them.
به راحتی دسترسی پیدا بکنن و اونها رو از بین ببرن.
I left the Leer Valley with all of its human bones and mysterious history. The very rich culture and history of Siraf is rife with creativity, art, and prudence. I am filled with utmost respect for my ancestors' construction abilities and their persistence against the odds. I pride myself on their prudence and perseverance. I have many unanswered questions about Siraf, but there is no one to answer them for me. But what I am sure about is the intelligence and creativity of the people of Siraf 1,500 years ago. I hope from the bottom of my heart that the environment in the vicinity of Siraf city remains as it is forever. But things are completely different. The massive South Pars oil and gas field has brought prosperity back to the region after more than 1,000 years. No one in the region is out of work. You'd be hard-pressed to see anyone on the streets of the city during the day. They are all working on the South Pars field or at companies affiliated to it. People come to work in Asaluya from far and wide and are busy making an honest living. The invaluable historical constructions of Siraf are under attack by unbridled development and have still not been listed as a World Heritage Site. However, I'm very hopeful that UNESCO would put this masterpiece of ancient Iran on its list. Where do you think I'm standing? The Khumbu Glacier in the Himalayas or the cold glaciers of Mount Damavand? This huge brown and white patch I'm standing on isn't a glacier or lava from a volcanic eruption. You may not believe this, but I'm standing smack in the middle of a huge river of salt. A river that was created over millions of years by rainwater washing down the Joshak Salt Dome and itself bringing about this gargantuan salt pit. On the next leg of my trip to Bushehr, the kind people of the region recommended that I pay a visit to a beautiful and bizarre mountain in the region, the Joshak Salt Dome. This lofty salt mountain is a unique sight to see. Joshak is a mountain of salt with ravines that have water with high concentrations of salt flowing in them. The Mond River, also known in English as the Mand River, runs through Fars province and Bushehr province in southwestern Iran, flowing to the Persian Gulf. When it arrives at the Joshak Salt Dome, it goes completely salty. So salty that almost no living being can drink it. And it's the same inside the Joshak Dome as well, meaning in all the deep and dangerous ravines in this area, there are multiple springs, especially during the rainy season. When the water from those springs flows here, it creates very beautiful salt crystals on its way, as you can see here, and creates such a beautiful landscape in this area. Joshak is one of Iran's very valuable natural attractions located in Bushehr province.
طبیعی بسیار بسیار با ارزش استان بوشهر و همینطور البته کشور عزیزمون ایرانه.
Salt potholes, small salt caves, salt towers, and waterfalls are among the beauties of this incomparable mountain. The scenery in the Joshak Salt Dome is spectacular in the true sense of the word. There isn't a scrap of rubbish or a sign or road in the whole area. Its pristineness makes it all the more attractive.
این منارهای نمکی واقعا اشکال بسیار زیبایی توشون پدیدار شده به خاطر اینکه
These salt minarets have very beautiful shapes. That's because rainwater washes away all those deposits and the cracks in the salt rocks, leaving these shapes and colors in its wake. They are amazing. This is one of the most beautiful spots in the natural environment of Bushehr province, the Joshak Salt Dome.
طبیعی استان بوشهر همین گنبد نمکی جاشکشه. دیگه بیشتر از این نمیتونم وارد غار بشم به خاطر اینکه خیلی دهانش البته اولش خیلی
I can't go any further in this cave because it is very wide and has a high ceiling at the entrance, but as you move further inside it, it gets too narrow to proceed in. I'm gonna need a helmet and proper spelunking gear. These stalagmites and stalactites that you see here and there are all over the place. They are all made of salt. The salt deposits and the water dripping from the ceiling have created these beautiful shapes. In some places, they look like cauliflower, both on the floor and on the walls of the cave. The most important thing we have to remember when we step into such a beautiful place is that we should only take pictures or feast our eyes on what we see here and leave without doing any damage whatsoever to these beautiful salt formations, without breaking off any of these stalagmites or stalactites and take it home with us. We shouldn't make changes to the place we are visiting and should leave without leaving behind a single trace of ourselves.
بهترین کار اینه که هیچ آسیبی به اینجا وارد نشه و بدون کوچکترین تغییری در محیط زیستی که وارد میشیم اونجا رو ترک بکنیم بدون اینکه کوچکترین اثری از خودمون به جا بگذاریم.
Fortunately, the informed, nature-loving individuals who have traveled to this area before were completely aware of their responsibility in relation to the environment. There are no writings on the walls or anywhere else in the caves. All the stalagmites and stalactites are intact and in their rightful places. Those nature travelers left Joshak without so much as make a dent in the salty formations here. Everything is as it should be for the future generations to see. I am basking in all the beauties of Bushehr province. The history and culture of the province, along with its beautiful and intact environment, preserved by the amicable and hospitable people of this land for future generations, is a striking museum of good deeds. I am in awe of the beauties in the southwest of my beloved country. It is difficult for me to leave behind all these beauties and all this kindness, but the fact is that my trip has come to an end. I have to return home and prepare for a trip to somewhere else in beautiful Iran. This is my homeland. I feel at home here no matter where I am, and I consider all its people as members of one big family. With a bag full of new experiences and memories, I leave Siraf with its beautiful environment and its rich history. And I do it without leaving behind any unfavorable trace of myself in the entire region.